Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Yes, I should start. That was live. Hello, I hope you are all safe and well. Let me just get that out of the way. Yes, it is Sunday night and it's time for another live stream. And tonight I'm going to try not to get myself in trouble, because there is so much I could get myself in trouble about tonight. Anyway, on tonight's live stream, we're going to talk about the Boxer, because Radiomaster have finally released the Max models, and they're nice. And I actually really like the gold one. And I have a question, because I have never owned a Radiomaster Max model. How well does that carbon fiber hold up? Because I like it. And we know it's fake. However, I do actually like it. But my question is, how well does it hold up over time? I'm asking you guys that because genuinely, I don't know. Secondly, we're going to talk about... What are we going to talk about? Secondly, we're going to talk about... I've forgotten the title. See, this is what happens. Oh, yeah. The video I put out earlier. Something else that is probably going to get me into trouble. But we're going to talk a bit about the effect Crossfire is having on the HDZero goggles, in the sense of, if you haven't seen, I've put a video out earlier, and it's a bit of a PSA more than anything, and I just want to make sure everyone understands that this isn't I hate HDZero goggles video. This is a genuine freak behavior, but actually it's very possible, if you're someone who is using either a Tango 2 or Crossfire and your battery cable is hanging around yourself, because it's not so much about how close to the goggles your transmitter gets. That's, you know, I don't see most people flying like that. The big issue is really if your battery cable was to get a bit close. We're then going to talk about a few other things. We're going to talk a little bit about the Bamboo release this week, a small amount, just to say it is coming on Tuesday. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the fact that DJI haven't released an update for 03. Ignore the Goggles 2. I'm going to put my phone on silent. Ignore the Goggles 2 a minute, but 03 itself since January. Now, as always, it is great to see everyone in the chat. Hello, I'm not going to go through everyone's name. Mr. Huggy, yes, it does, but we will talk about that a bit more later on as well. And if you don't know what that question is, does Express LRS 900 affect it as well? I have since had it confirmed. Absolutely. I don't actually have 900 Express LRS here. I did have a set on loan, but it's just not something I have laying around. I don't feel the need to run out and do a mod on an R9 or stuff like that. I really would like it if a manufacturer would bang out some nice new Express LRS gear. Talking to you, Radiomaster. But the reality is it is affected by 900 across the board. 2.4 is fine. I've seen no evidence of it on 2.4. And the interesting thing about this, and we will talk about this a bit more, is this has been catching people out for a few months, and it's only taken a bit of time for everyone to come together on this and go, oh, it's this causing it, because people have been having like random reboots and not understanding why and stuff like that. And it turns out 99% of the time it was caused by Crossfire or a 900 system. And for those who didn't see the video I put out today, I also checked it with one of these, which is a 900 megs LoRa radio. This is RF Designs, and this causes it as well. And it's been since confirmed that Express ELRS at 900 does too. And obviously, we will answer any questions you may have along the way as well. As always, I want to say a big hello to everyone in the chat. If you're new here, welcome. Just really a slow start on this. Hopefully the stream is working tonight. Last week's was a horrific start. I did reboot before starting the stream tonight, and I did do a reboot actually on the router yesterday as well, and I just did a quick speed test before coming on. We've got 300 down and 60 up. We should be fine, all being well. But yeah, interesting. Now, just to talk a little bit about this week, as I showed last week, we did have the Defender 16 in. I haven't flown it yet. The weather this week has been really weird, and I just haven't had a chance to fly it yet. But I am going to try and do that this week. But that is something I want to do. I also have the new Nazgul 4-inch as well, and we might take a look at that later. And we will probably, well, there will be a review on that this week as well, as is coming up. There is also a couple of other things I can't talk about that are coming up this week. The Nazgul 4, I think it's the 4. Is it the 4-inch? Is it 3.5 or the 4-inch? I need to check. That one. It's really nice. Really nice as well. But the weather here has been horrific, and I've also got a bit of a cold, so you're going to have me sniffing a little bit tonight. I do apologize. My sinuses are in a freaking mess for some strange reason, and we're going to talk about that. Now, just to catch down on the chat a minute, HDZero, Crossfire, what is the fix? There is no fix, because you can't really fix. It's not really a fault. And really, the solution is separation, but we will talk about that. Just reading down. I reboot everything before every stream. Good moving. Really strange this problem has come out now. One, Willie, I think it's taken till now simply because of the amount of people using the system. And to be fair, I don't fly Crossfire on a daily basis myself. And I think it's just taken more time for the goggles to come out. Remember, shipments have been quite small on the HDZero goggles, volume-wise. I don't know how many they've sold, but, you know, we're not talking DJI numbers here, and as a result of it, things take a bit more time to move through. Mr. Huggy, so there must be something that is the same wavelength. I suspect this is as really simple as the lack of shielding in the HDZero goggle, and I do talk about that in the video. We will take a look at that tonight as well, a bit more on repair.wiki, but the real basics are there is no internal RF shielding on the HDZero goggles. That is largely because they probably don't need it because they don't transmit. So if you think about the DJI side of things and the Avatar HD, they are transmitting goggles, and as a result of that, there's all this RF stuff that needs to be contained and stop spurious RF emissions, whereas HDZero doesn't have that as such, largely because it's not a transmitting device. But on the flip side of that, it then becomes susceptible, and that's where we're seeing this issue. And the nasty thing around it is the fact that it reboots the HDZero goggles, whereas whilst Avatar is affected, it doesn't reboot the RF. What's really weird is the avatar fans reboot and the goggles beep, but they don't reboot the RF, which is sort of explainable because the fan control board is not shielded, whereas the RF board is. So there is some quirks to that. What's happening with Crossfire? We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. But yeah, overall, it's a different set of goggles. Now, it is a potential issue, and it isn't, in the sense of, look, you should never be putting your transmitter that close to the goggles. Will I be talking about new VTX from HDZero? I will briefly mention it tonight, but I have one en route, and it should be here this week. The video, though, will not be this week. The video will be next week, because by the time it arrives, I'll be traveling. But there is a new HDZero VTX as well. There's a reason I haven't talked about it, because I don't have it yet, but Carl has sent me one, and it's en route, and I will do a full review of that when it comes out. But the very basics is we now have a HDZero 1-watt VTX in a Vista 03 platform, which is a complete no-brainer, because the reality is the only manufacturer people make frames for is DJI. There is no other manufacturer that people make frames for. They just don't. Avatar HD's not had a custom frame. No one does it. What people make frames for, and look at all of the marketing, even JB's frame, 03 compatible. And why is that? Because DJI is the gorilla in the room. When 03 released, everyone released new frames to compensate and cope with it. So that just shows you how important DJI is. So the no-brainer is to make your VTX the same as theirs. That way it fits. So that's the basics, but we will touch on that a little bit. So the first subject we will come on to tonight, and we're going to get it out the way early doors. And I forgot to do something before going live, as always. But the big one is Radiomaster, and let's see if it's going to work every time. Is it working? Oh, look, that's me. Hello. That's not working. I forgot to check. I know what's happened. 1 second. I forgot to check NVIDIA Broadcast, because NVIDIA Broadcast cannot stay with the same settings that you leave it with, and it always changes, for some reason, to HDMI 4 as well. Never understood why that is. Is it going to work? Woohoo! And let's come over to here and turn that back on. 1 monitor, 2 monitors. Let's go again. Whee! There we go. Put me down in the corner. Woohoo! Right, so Radiomaster have finally released the Boxer Max. Now, these look lovely. Not so much a big fan of the red, but the Boxer Max is available with the red gimbals. You've now got the CNC buttons with the inlays, CNC knobs, and that carbon fiber look over the radio itself. Not so much a big fan of the red. I really like the black. The black is very me. I'll be honest, I think that is very nice. However, I'll be honest, the freaking gold looks phenomenal. I think, genuinely, I didn't like the gold gimbals on their own, but wow. Wow, wow, wow. I wouldn't even mind the black gimbals with the gold bits. I wouldn't even mind that, but I do think that looks nice. Genuinely, I do like the black though. but I just think it looks a little bit plain. I haven't seen a blue. Is there a blue of this yet? I don't know if there is. I don't think there is there? No. So we've only got red, gold, and black. Now, price-wise, it's coming in at $259, which basically is the same price as the Rotor Riot edition, which is good value. When you add it up, it's good value. They haven't made the buttons and the switches available yet, so you can't get these. I think they probably will eventually. I think the Rotor Riot one looks really nice. I do think the Rotor Riot ones. I put the Lumineer Blue HDZero ones in my Boxer. Nice. I think the blues would be nice. But yeah, I think it's a really nice looking radio, and it's great to see. And then it does have the leather grips on the side, which is really quite nice with the coloured stitching. I'd like blue. And then you've got the metal stand as well. Now, what I don't know, and I've never owned, how the carbon fibre pattern on these, how well does this hold up? Has anyone here got one of these with the carbon fibre, one of the older ones? I've never had one of the Radiomaster carbon fibres. So is it like a coating over the top, or is that into the plastic? Is my question. You know, you can get like wraps that are carbon fibre and they don't last very well. Is it like a wrap, or is it more in the radio? Because I genuinely don't know. And it's mega nice. That's nice. It does look awful when it wears off. Yeah, that's my thought. But how easy does it wear off? Good as when you bought it. No, it is the plastic. Okay. It's a carbon fibre sticker. Okay. So I suppose it's how well you treat it. It's water sipped. Okay. Now I understand. Yeah. It's water dipped. Yeah. I bet the hydro dip in the inside of a Boxer shell would look nice. Yeah, I really do. Yeah, it does look very, very nice. It really does. Hopefully they're going to release these so it's not metal. No, it is not a metal front plate. Not metal front plate. It is carbon fiber look. But I do think it looks nice. But with the printing over the top. So look, it must be a slightly different front panel, because that's pronounced on the original one, whereas on this that looks flat. But genuinely, I think it looks nice. I do like the gold one. I wish the back matched the front. Yeah, I do agree on that somewhat. I do get that. Water transfer, but the TX16 lasted like it was in plastic. Okay, cool. I haven't actually looked, but I think, yeah, very nice indeed. It's really great to see. I hope they release the bits so I can upgrade mine. I'd like to upgrade mine to the to probably the gold one, but I've got the HDZero ones in black, so I'd probably stay with the HDZero ones in black, and maybe rock the gold buttons. Because they don't offer blue. Yeah, I wish TBS would make a radio from that form factor. Yeah, it's really nice. I think the only thing that's on the clear shells on the Boxer and stuff, I think the only thing that lets them down, and I don't mean this negatively because it isn't, but the downside to all of the clear shells is you see the screw bosses at the front. What's really nice on the pocket, let me just grab the pocket. Here. And you can see them, but they're not as pronounced. But the screw bosses are not really visible on the pocket as much. You can see them, but I did notice on the Boxer clear shell that the mounting posts are quite visible at the front. It'd be nice if they come up with one where they could hide that a little bit, and it didn't show through. But yeah, I think price-wise, it's good to see. It's good to see them release it. I just got the clear shell for some bespoke models, but I want the bits to go with my current HDZero on CNCs. Yeah, it's nice. It is nice. So Good job, Radiomaster. We thought they were coming. They have finally done it. Pocket Pro when? Someone asked, and someone did ask earlier about when there's CNC gimbals for this. How hard is it to change a shell? Not very hard. Not hard at all. I don't, guys, I just don't see there being a pro version of this. It's not that market. People keep asking for CNC gimbals on this and a pro version. I do not see it happening. It's just not this radio. It's not for that market. It's just not for that market. It really isn't. But yeah, it's a good radio. It's a good radio nonetheless. I'm still tempted to do the 1 watt mod on this if people are interested, but I'm not sure it's needed. I'm really not sure it's needed. This is the greatest radio now. I think they've done a really good job. When is the bigger review? The bigger review will probably be midweek. 1 watt. This is 250 milliwatts. I'm tempted to do a 1 watt mod on this to show people how to do it. Just put in the Boxer radio module, basically. It's not going to be hard. But I'm not sure it's needed. Possible. We'd have to 3D print a fan cover for it. A fan holder, but it's all doable. All achievable. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to move on to, and then I'm going to take some questions after this, we're going to move on to the HDZero goggle thing, because I've put a video out tonight, and for those who haven't seen it, let me just go into here. For those who haven't seen it, there is a video that I have released. That is the thumbnail, for those who haven't seen it. And I'm going to explain this a little bit more in a minute. Quite like that thumbnail. I think I like that. It come out quite nice. Took me some while to find some PNG of lightning, but yes, there is an issue, and it's I don't. I'm being loose on the word issue. Issue is an overstatement, because pumping 1 watt of RF next to something isn't a good idea anyway. However, there is a behavior where if you put Crossfire too close to the HDZero goggles, it will cause them to reboot. Okay? Now, just to show you this, because I only finished this video today, so I will have all of the footage here somewhere. Here we go. Now, I'm not going to put the audio on this. Now, what I will say is this. Crossfire completely screwed with my audio when I was recording it. The way the video has gone out, I had to put heavy noise isolation on, right? What you guys don't realize is how much of an effect it had. It is incredible. I'll actually play a bit for you in a minute. So let me just find this piece of the video. Let me just find this video. So, now, that's 25 milliwatt. We don't want that one. Let me just find the right. Now, just to demonstrate the. Let me just turn the audio off. Let me just check this is the right video. Yes, it is. Cue it up. Right. Okay. So, desktop. So, I'm not going to play the audio. So, just so for those who haven't seen, so we've got the HDZero goggles here. We've got the battery cable around here, and the battery is actually behind here. Okay. So, I do show this in the video back there. So, let me just go back to there and hit play. There. That's the cable, just to show you. Now, this little image below me and this image behind me is the live view from the HDZero goggles just being recorded. And what we're doing is we're going round with Crossfire, and you can see there, the goggles have rebooted. So at the point that video going, the goggles have rebooted at that point. So we'll just wait a minute. It's not that you've just lost HDMI out. It's a complete reboot of the goggles. I'll come on to ExpressLRS in a minute, Steve. We'll just wait. That was just as you saw there. It went through. and then it stopped. Okay. Now, that's 25 milliwatts. We don't want that. So just to demonstrate it again, it goes around. We move it around. I start moving it up the cable. And boom, the goggles have reset. Okay? Now, let me just find it when we move it next to the HDZero goggles, because we also try it moving it next to the goggles themselves. So here we go. So this is the next thing. So I'm holding the HDZero goggles. We're going to bring Crossfire in. Yes, I tested both 868 and 915. It's exactly the same. No, and there you can see within that range, the HDZero goggles have rebooted. Okay? So you saw then, let's just go back on that. You see me pick it up. It is not power related, in my opinion. This is MCU clock related. So again, if we come in, you can see, boom, at that point, the goggles reboot. Now, the reason it's happening near the cable is it's just finding its way into the goggles. And it causes the goggles to reboot. Now, what's quite amusing is, let me just turn this up. I'm going to play to you the audio that I recorded, because I had to filter some of this to stop it actually coming through on the video. But I'm going to unmute this and play a minute and give you an idea of how Crossfire actually affected my microphone as well. So I'm just going to let me... it sort of kicks in. Now, the very basics are, as I've said, if Crossfire gets too close to the HDZero goggles, it will cause them to reboot. So what I'm going to do is hold the HDZero goggles here. I'm just going to pick up my radio there. And what I'm going to do is begin to move the radio close to the goggles. And as you can see there, they've rebooted. Now, at that point, you can hear that the fans actually... So you got to hear this, some of the effect that it was having on the audio, and it is horrific. It was horrific. Now, it is worth me mentioning at this point, it is affected by any 900 or 868 system. I tested in both. That isn't just Crossfire. I tested RFD 900s, and whilst I don't have 8 or 900 Express ELRS, someone else has confirmed it for me as well. DJI is not affected. However, Avatar HD is. But Avatar HD is affected differently. Avatar doesn't completely reboot the goggles. Avatar simply resets the fans and starts beeping, which is a bit weird, but the RF side of things holds up fine. Now, as I said in the video, for those who've watched it, you'll know DJI isn't affected at all. DJI has no effect on this whatsoever. Now, as for the cause, we don't know. We simply do not know. It could be power supply related. It could be RF main CPU related, FPGA related. It could be a clock that's getting affected by Crossfire. It could be a switching regulator that's being affected by Crossfire. I do not know the actual cause. What is clear, though, is that it affects HDZero worse than the other goggles. Okay, now, I'm not saying it is a fault of HDZero. It is just a fact. There is a very big difference inside in how these goggles are built and how these goggles are shielded. And I do show this on the video. If we go on to repair.wiki, and if we just take a look at things in here. So if we start with the DJI goggles a minute, just because the DJI goggles are really easy. If we look at the main boards on the DJI goggles, right, the can lids are lifted for this image, but there is cans lids over these normally. So pretty much all of the main circuitry is shielded, and on this side of the board, it's exactly the same. Shielded on that power supply, shielded there, shielded there, shielded there. So this board is virtually entirely shielded. Side to side, nothing can get in. If we look at Avatar HD, things are similar in the sense of the goggles have this large shielding can over the top of the main RF area. However, if we get to the power supply, let me just get to it. The power supply board doesn't. And this is also the fan controller here. And it's interesting that this was being affected. Now, if we just have a quick look at HDZero, there is no shielding on these boards, okay? So there is just nothing at all on these, okay? No shielding there, no shielding that side, no shielding on them, no shielding on them. There's no shielding at all. So the reason for HDZero being affected more is really straightforward. There's less shielding. AVI physics. Do you know what? I had that thought. A spray of metallic spray could help. However, for me, the issue is not putting Crossfire near the goggles. You shouldn't do that. It's just not a good idea. It's just not a good idea. You shouldn't need to put Crossfire near your goggles. The issue is the power cable. The risk is the power cable. If you've got your power cable down by your belt, LiPo in your pocket, and you were to put your antenna too close, that's where you're going to have a problem. The goggles themselves is fine. There's no issue here. I had to highlight all parts of it because that is how it is. I got to show the whole thing. But the goggles is not the issue. The power cable is. So, solution number 1, put your battery in your head strap. Problem solved. Solution number 2, put the power cable down your back and put the battery in your back pocket or on the back of your belt, if you're a Crossfire user with HDZero. Solution number 3 is whether we can shield the power cable. That's the next option. What I would do, you'd need really to have a filter capacitor circuit to stop. You want a low pass filter, is what you want for the DC pass filter on the power input. When Ciati turns on his TX's stream audio gets wonky, it's something that I felt a lot. Yeah, it does, especially if you Crossfire and high power outputs. DJI has a huge amount of experience. Kakamyu just said, looks like DJI have more experience in the RF board design. DJI have more experience in the RF board design than probably anyone else in drones and FPV. You have to remember how many drones DJI have made with RF gear on it. DJI have been making wireless FPV systems since 2013. People think DJI started making FPV in 2018 or 2019 when the FPV system released. DJI was making wireless FPV systems on their consumer drones since 2013. They have... You can't even... To say anyone can even get close to DJI, they can't. They're not even remotely in the same ballpark of experience. Just think how many Mavics DJI have out there, all flying, logging data on the RF system today. Just think of all of that data they have that ends up going back in repair requests and things like this. They have a huge, huge amount of experience in RF, more than anyone else. And that's why their system looks so damn good. Because they've been doing it longer and they own the stack high to low. And I am going to talk about one last thing at the end of this on this, because there's a real interesting subject that's come to light this week, which could have implications in FPV as well, around a system. So I'm going to catch up on a chat message someone mentioned just now, but I want to just wrap up this HDZero goggle thing. So it's affected by all 900. It is not a fault. We cannot call this a fault. It's not right to call it a fault. It is a quirk of mixing multi-RF systems. Now, the unfortunate bit of this is the reboot, especially if Crossfire is near the power cable. But again, I still would not be happy calling it a fault. I think a proper shielded battery cable is a real interesting try, and that's something I want to do. I'm going to make one myself. I'm going to end up actually... Where is it? Let me just look a minute. I have a roll of copper tape here somewhere. It's bloody vanished. I have more than one roll. That's weird. That's really weird. It's vanished. Ferrite rings could help. Definitely. Ferrite ring is worth a shot. Have I got anything with a ferrite bead on? Let me think. Usually some of the high-end power cables have a ferrite on, don't they? A ferrite might do it, you know. Have I got anything with a ferrite on? Don't think I have. Just having a think. You don't see it anymore like you used to. Rip it off the new bamboo printer. That's an idea. What new bamboo printer? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a new bamboo printer. Is there a new bamboo printer coming? I'm trying to annoyed where my roll of copper tape has gone. Aha! Found it. So I might do a test with this later. A ferrite bead. Have I got a ferrite on anything? It's been a few years. I've never seen a clamp-on choke do anything useless. Yeah, you're going to want to go through it twice. At least. Have I got one on anything? You don't see them anymore. I'm going to have to think about that. It's got to be one on something I can maul. Tell you the last time I saw one. Laptop power supply cables. Yeah. I suppose I'll have to order one in. They got them on Amazon. Some large ferrite beads. Here we go. Oh, they got boxes of them on Amazon. You want some... What I'd like is a big one to go through a couple of times. You want like a good ring. Everyone likes a good ring. I'm going to have a look. What's the ring on the end of a power cable? Yeah, just trying to think what I got on the end of any power cables. There aren't a good 3-pin, mate. 1 second. No. All of my power cables are cheap. None of them have got ferrites on. None of them have got ferrites. Nope. That's one for later. That's one for later. Okay. Now, I just want to catch up on a message. Just realised that Tweet FPV Dan stopped doing live streams. Has he? I didn't realise this. It's going to be hard to see it on an oscilloscope, AVI, because you're going to need a 1 gig oscilloscope. None of my oscilloscopes go up to 1 gigs. You'll see it on the spectrum analyzer, but you're not seeing the right thing. It's going to be very... Look, we know there's 900 megs there. That's not in question. It's how we get around that. Just thinking, is there a ferrite bead on that 3D printer over there? Right, someone mentioned, and I missed a chat question, and I just want to say, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. Super chats are always welcome, but they're not required for me to answer a question. But someone asked me about what do I think of an FPV system, and I missed the question. Let me just have a look. What's my thought about the system Open IRC? Will it be close to Walksnail? Right. I have already got myself in trouble for this once before. For those who don't know what Open IRC is, and I'm going to get myself into trouble again and upset loads of people. So, wait, are you talking... not Open IRC, Open... You're not talking IRC. I can't remember the name. It's going to come to me in a minute. Can someone remember the name? You're talking about the one that is new firmware for cameras that basically flashes the camera directly to the Wi-Fi and without having to need a processor in between. And it is called OpenIPC. There you go. That's it. I couldn't think what it was called. It will amount to absolutely nothing and have no effect at all. Okay, I'm going to be critical, not of the project. Right, the project is very simple. You are running the software element on board the chipset on the cameras, and rather than using processing separately, you're then just streaming that straight into the Wi-Fi adapter. You cannot compare this to HDZero, DJI, or Avatar HD. It will never be the same as those systems. It's not remotely the same. So, DJI is based, as is Avatar HD, on LTE. Now, this actually walks really nicely into a subject that I was going to talk about. And let me just bring it up ready. Okay. 2 seconds. And then I'll get back on it. Don't worry, I'll be dropping myself into trouble soon. Right. OpenIPC is in essence Wi-Fi streaming without processing. You just cannot achieve what DJI and Avatar do in that method. They are all using heavily compressed LTE-based systems. The modems that DJI use, the baseband is all LTE technology. Now, you may ask yourself, why is it that DJI originally was so far ahead of everyone else, and then we saw Avatar, yet we don't have anything like this in the West and in America and in Europe? And this is really, really simple, okay? The technology that DJI are now using and Avatar HD is based on LTE. That technology is heavily closed and licensed in the West. All of the patents around this, all of the controls around this are held by a very small amount of companies, one of the largest being Qualcomm. For anyone who's been following iPhone launches over the last few years, there's been a lot of hoo-ha over the Intel modems not being as fast as the Qualcomm ones, and that is because Qualcomm own pretty much all of the patents on this technology. They do not let you do anything with it other than what they say. Okay? Now, that then opens the question, well, how are DJI and others doing this if we can't do it over here? The crux of this goes back, right back, to a deal done mostly around 2012 and 13 with a company called Seva and a company called Leadcore. Leadcore was China's first attempt at making processors for their smartphones in-house in China. So understand that we all think China own, a lot of what we buy, but the reality is a lot of the IP and tech is still owned by the West. So smartphone ICs, it's Apple today or it's Qualcomm. That's basically it. There are others out there, the Snapdragon, but it's those two. That is literally it. However, China wanted to have its own smart device processor, and as a result, they did a licensing deal to get their hands on those LTE technologies and DSP cores by Seva. Now, what that licensing deal was, no one knows. However, Leadcore, which is what DJI originally used in OcuSync 1, pretty much went out of business and got absorbed into a Chinese government tech agency. And then all of that has reappeared in different places since, including DJI's P1 and now the Artisan chipset in Avatar HD. Now, there is a lot of complication here I could go into that. It's worth understanding that DJI actually worked with Artisan on Lightbridge. So there is a link between DJI and Artisan, okay? They actually worked on Lightbridge together. And then DJI worked with Leadcore, and then they had their own chipset. There is a loose belief that Artisan helped DJI with the P1. We don't know for sure, but we just have a feeling there may have been a help with it on, because Artisan are a chip designing company, DJI are not. Okay? However, whatever that deal probably was, they weren't allowed to copy it for a number of years or use that for a number of years. And then suddenly we start to see a chipset that is very similar appear 3-4 years later. And that's where we are today. Now, there is absolutely loads of smartphone chipsets out there that could do what DJI are doing. But the problem is in the West, no one is given that low-level deep access. This isn't as simple as just taking the chipset and saying, I want the modem to do this. You basically have to rewrite the whole LTE baseband to change the waveform to do what you want it to do. And that is just not allowed by the companies, the IP holders in the West. Snapdragon, Qualcomm, they literally control the whole industry with regards to LG, 4G and LTE, 4G and 5G especially. Qualcomm have got real controls over 5G, complete controls over 5G. Everyone is succumb to them right now. Now, what is super interesting is the new Huawei Mate 60 Pro. And there's actually an amazing video on this, right, by Asianometry. If you don't watch Asianometry, you need to watch this channel. This is one of my favorite channels on the internet, period. This guy is frankly phenomenal. But he recently covered this, China's 7nm production breakthrough. And what this is there is a brand new chipset coming out of China for smartphones, not by Ledco, because Ledco don't exist, but it's by a company owned by Huawei. And this again has the SIVA DSPs and all of this stuff. And this is another attempt at the Chinese homegrown smartphone chip. Now, interestingly, it wasn't the LTE side of things that didn't make Ledco successful. It was just the overall processing side. That was the bit that let them down. They had the LTE bit sorted. It was just the overall performance. Okay. And this is the interesting thing. Now, anyone can do what DJI are doing, but you need enough access. And this is the problem with all of these other systems. So, if we start talking about OpenIPC, it's Wi-Fi. It's still Wi-Fi. It's not Wi-Fi, but it's still a Wi-Fi waveform in the end. They can change it as much as they want, but it is not DJI. I think it could be really interesting for wireless security cameras. It could be really interesting for static wireless video. It's not for FPV. It's just not for FPV. It's just not going to do it. It's also, when you look at some of the other systems that are out there, there are pretty high-end other systems out there. If I just have a look, I always forget the name of this company. It'll come to me in a minute. Let me just remind myself. I always forget the name of them. Doodle Labs. Sorry. You do have systems by Doodle Labs. For those who don't know, Doodle Labs make some pretty high-end military commercial grade RF RF systems. But again, when you deep dive into these, and I have, and I'll show you in a minute, we've already done it, they're still based off Wi-Fi based chipsets using open WRT is what they're using. So they have these wireless systems which they're saying go long range, over 116 kilometers. But their chipsets are all Wi-Fi based. Everything I've seen so far are Wi-Fi based chipsets. Okay, so these do exist. Mostly for military applications. But when you start looking at them from an FCC point of view, so if I got to hide that a minute because I don't want to, if we start looking at some of the internal photos, and I've already been through all of this on the FCC labs, because remember, they have to publish everything. Interesting, they're using like a PCMA MCIA card. But when you look in it, they're using off-the-shelf Wi-Fi chipsets. So here it is. So it is the QCA 453. And it's basically a Wi-Fi chipset is what it is. It's still not LTE based. And don't get me wrong, they could be doing some pretty clever stuff with it. It's just a completely different waveform. Is it unlikely that Wi-Fi chipsets could evolve to be competitive with LTE? It's just Wi-Fi chipsets are restricted in certain ways. Remember, LTE is very much... all DJI are really doing is taking full control of the SDR. The problem with most of the Wi-Fi chipsets is it's not an SDR. So the radio front end is largely hardware. It's set in stone. So the waveform has to conform to certain specifications. It has to have certain bandwidth. It has to have certain behavior with regards to the overall waveform. Okay? Whereas DJI have taken the LTE chipset and it's allowed them to completely rework it in the way they want. Basically, you need a complete open SDR. You just need a complete open SDR and the key to do it. Do I think Google on the firmware side have a decent chance at the issue? You have to remember, big companies will have access to stuff the public don't. In America, DJI's probably, there are easily equivalent systems in the military's hands, but they're just not in the public hands. No one will open that IP up to the public. Yeah, someone like Mr. Huggy, there are like Tradec. Yes, I've seen them. They do 100 milliseconds. Yeah. There are systems out there. There are many, many systems out there. But there's a big difference is what DJI give us to the public probably only exists behind very, very closed doors in America and the West. That's the fundamental difference here. What DJI is selling you in a Mavic Mini for $400, someone is selling to the US military for $4 million. And that's the basics here. That's the difference. It's that crazy. What is super interesting though, and as I said already, if you're not watching Asianometry, you should check it out. It is a phenomenal YouTube channel. It's well worth a listen. Well worth a listen. I'm just going to send a message to my person to get me a drink because I am desperate. I'm going to very kindly... Yeah, the problem with the modem stuff is the patents. That's the problem with the modem stuff. HDZero wasn't developed for FPV. No, Carl was designing it for wireless video, really, wasn't it? And that tends to be, what you see in China is they just push forward so fast, whereas in the West, we tend to be years behind. If you think... Let's just say DJI were a year ahead of the military. In America, it would be 10 to 20 years. A year behind the military application. So let's just say DJI was a year behind what was in the government's hands. In the West, it would be 10 to 20 years behind. Over here, we hold on to technology far, far longer. Stock of Mads Tech. Mads Coin. And that's the big difference. China is just constant march forward. Backup camera and wireless VR, yeah. And look, let's be honest, that's probably HDZero's real ideal scenario. Look, we all know what the breakup's like on HDZero and stuff like that, It's, HDZero is at its best when it's not having to break up. Yeah, well, this chip is very different. This chip exists, Andrew. So this new chip that's in the smartphone, it exists. This is very real. It's on a 7-nanometer process. This is a very, very real piece of kit. And they've done it without EUV as well. Because remember, EUV is banned in China. China have not been able to get access to the ASML EUV machines. So they have managed to get to 7 nanometer with immersion technology and not EUV. And that in itself is a huge, huge thing. And for those who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, EUV is the latest way we've been able to shrink chips down. It is an incredibly interesting subject. TSMC had bought pretty much every EUV machine that existed for 2 years, and then Intel are buying all of the others. However, China has been banned from gaining access via ASML. And for those who don't know, ASML are basically the only company who can make this stuff. And we're not talking about, I'm going to knock something together in my shed here. However, China has had to push forward with traditional immersion lithography. And as a result of that, they've actually managed to keep it going as far as 7 nanometer. And this has actually raised a few eyebrows, to say the least. And this is actually really interesting, as you can see I'm getting excited now, because everyone pushed to EUV to get below 10 nanometer, right? We've got to have EUV. That's the only way to do it. Now they're all sitting back and looking, going, China, and Zeiss for the mirrors, yeah. But China, yeah, no one can do it without, basically, ASML and Zeiss. But they were like, no, you can't have them. So China has had to push on without it and have found a way around it. And now the interesting thing is, did TSMC, not so much, but Intel are looking and going, did we really need to spend all this money if we'd have just tried harder? Because China have managed to get to 7 nanometer without having EUV. And now, yeah, and EUV is, to give you an idea of the cost, I think each EUV machine is something like 250 million. Just to give you an idea of the cost of each machine. And Intel have these in rooms of, well, Intel are building these in rooms of like 5s and 10s. I can't remember how many TSMC made. I think they can make like 60 of these a year. We hired a guy that worked for the lithography company in LTT Video. It's super cool. Oh, it's incredible. Yeah. Apple are down now to, is it 3 in the new chip? But it's worth remembering, it's not all 3. There are only elements of it that are 3 or 5 or 7. It's only certain bits of it. And remember, nanometer is complete bullshit anyway, because there's no measure, there's no comparison. It's simply how many transistors they can fit. But yeah, I'm sure Apple's down to 3, aren't they, on the new chipset? I'll know in a week. I've ordered one. Why do you think new fabs cost 30 billion a piece? Yeah, exactly. And for those who don't understand, and just to give you an idea of what they actually have to do with an EUV machine, you take slugs of tin, you melt them, and you drop a droplet at thousands of times a second, droplets of it. You then fire an extreme UV laser at it twice. The first time to shape the droplet from a round to actually like a flat coin shape, and the second time to evaporate it. And when they evaporate it with the second laser burst, it creates the EUV light. It's not an EUV laser they fire at it, but it's another laser. And it creates the EUV light that they need to basically create the wafers. But they fire a laser at it to change the shape before firing a laser at it to actually evaporate it. It is incredible technology. And it's taken, EUV's been something like 20 odd years. EUV was meant to be ready in 2010, if I remember, and they're only just getting it. Apple has bought up TSMC's 3nm processor. Yeah, I thought it was 3. But that's leading edge. Sorry, that's bleeding edge. Leading edge is, interestingly, bleeding edge is always interesting, but the leading edge is where we are, is where our processor... You know, we're still at like 90 nanometer on most of our STM32s, F405s. It's incredible technology. It's just incredible. Tell you what, it's worth watching the Asianometry video on EUV. It's just mind-boggling. It's just mind-boggling. It really is. So, how we got on that, I don't know. How old is LTE? LTE's old. It's been around a long time now. You got to remember, these standards come in donkey's years. I think DJI bought access to the LTE modems in like 2013. Sorry, not DJI, Ledco. Something like that. Okay. So, that is that subject. Was there anything else I'd put in the doc? Oh, yes. We'll finish on... We'll do some questions, if you've got any, and then we'll finish on the DJI. I'm just trying to see if my drinks order has been picked up. Been delivered quietly. I'm going to have to make a phone call a minute, folks. 2 seconds. There we go. Please bring tea. No, it's too hot for tea. I'm going to have a cold drink. How deep is this iceberg? If you got any questions, yeah, infrared, convert to UV. Yeah, it's an incredibly interesting subject. How's your Bamboo Lab? Cloud service. Has it been down this afternoon? I haven't printed today. They're all off today, so I can't answer. Has it been down again? I haven't looked on Facebook. If it has, they need to sort that out. I can't comment. And the Bamboo, the P1S is fantastic. The X1 is amazing as well. There is a launch this week. There has been comments that it is going to be a printer. That is what has been said. I am aware of what is coming, but I don't have what is coming. But I know about it. And that's all I can say. Okay? And what I am putting something together for the day, but there will be obviously reviews, and then I'll share my thoughts, and then we'll go from there. The P1S is phenomenal, I think. Saint Smart is perfect for the P1S. No problem at all. Will a Walksnail VTX burn out without an antenna? I've not managed to do it yet, and I've done it a few times. Oh, I'm just going to grab my drink. 2 seconds. That's better. Saint Smart is great TPU. But yes, so look, I'm not going to get myself into trouble. I think what you'll probably find is, like any launch, you have all of the main creators will get that in the 3D printing world, and that's what's going to happen here, whatever it is, and then it will filter down to everyone else from there. But I don't have one for what appears to be launch day, but we will... there is a lot to discuss. And it affects, I 100% think it affects the world I talk about as well. Best source of TPU settings. I have a video on a setting. Walksnail, AVI physics. I discussed on last week's stream that I said there were rumors about Walksnail goggles. There are still rumors about Walksnail goggles. That's all I can say. Is that a screwdriver? No, it's not a screwdriver. Just catching down. I'm just waiting for the X1 CE. Yeah, I don't know anything about an X1 CE. I think that it will be Enterprise and it'll have a LAN port. That's what I think. Here's a bet. The X1E, I reckon, will be Enterprise with a LAN port and maybe some specific offline firmware. Here's what I wouldn't be shocked at if Bamboo never quite gave the consumer models that full offline capability and they did in an enterprise model. That would be very DJI, and that does feel like it would be very Bamboo. Bamboo have said they're going to be bringing more offline modes to the X1 and the P series. However, let's be realistic. They make it difficult. Okay? They make it difficult. Compared to Creality, Creality has a send via Wi-Fi button. Just there. Bamboo, you have to change the mode of the printer. And then you lose some functionality. That is nonsense, frankly, and it shouldn't be that way. I would not be shocked if an X1E was an enterprise version that had like a LAN port for network connectivity and a proper offline mode, whereas the consumer ones still had this online tie-in. And it is about the only thing I can complain about on the Bamboo models, and it doesn't affect me at all. But I just feel they are being a little difficult on this on purpose. But that is very DJI. That is very how these companies work. And I just saying that might even get me into trouble with this new release and not involved. Enterprise should absolutely have offline updates. I wouldn't be shocked if there was an enterprise model that had everything everyone's asked for in the normal models. I wouldn't be shocked. And you pay more for it. That would be my bets. As for the leak numbers on the A1, we're just going to have to see. Yeah, price, definitely. I agree. I think you could see it being another $300. Definitely. I can see it definitely being another $300. You have deal breakers. You have offline mode. You just got to manually do it. You have it on the printers. It's not that it's not there. The annoyance is you lose the app functionality. That's the annoyance. But then I will say this. Okay. I have bigged up Creality, do it better here. But the printer is still online. So even with Creality, although you can send it over Wi-Fi, are you really secure? Because the printer's still online. To be fair to Bamboo, when you're taking it in offline mode, it's offline. You just completely offline. Whereas Creality, you're just sending it via Wi-Fi. But if you were doing commercial prints, would you trust that? So in some ways, I do get what Bamboo are doing. What I would just love is, and I don't know how they can do this, is for the app to work on the local network on local Wi-Fi mode. That would just be brilliant. I do use Fusion 360 these days. Have I ever stress tested an AO, a 4-in-1 under thermal cams? No. It's quite hard to do because you're going to have to... Because remember, putting a motor load on it isn't enough. It would have to be a motor load with props. Could do it. It's then dealing with the danger element of it. What I'd have to do is build 4 props on a board on one side and have the cables coming through to the ESC mounted on the back. So that way I'm behind the board and you could have props on it. And I could then do the thermal stuff without the props. What slicer do I use? I use Bamboo Slicer. I don't bother with Orqa. I am more than happy with Bamboo Slicer. Ooh, Lightning Storm over there. Very nice. But yeah, I do think that's the one thing that Bamboo could do better is the offline mode. Just the offline mode. They just need to tweak it. That's all. I did this week, for those who don't know, I did put out the video on the K1. It's over there. It's a very good printer, but it is not without its problems. Something quite interesting, actually, on the K1 compared to the Bamboo video. So, interestingly, obviously, whenever you put out a review, you get 2 types of comments. The people who are interested, who will like it or not like it, and the people who have it, who will tell you their experience as well. And they will either give you confirmation of your experience is the same as theirs, or they'll say, actually, no, I found it was better, or no, I found it was worse. On the Bamboo videos, both of them, all of the comments were pretty aligned. I love mine. It's great. It's fantastic. On the Creality video were very few negatives. Whereas on the Creality, a lot of people are having problems. And I just found that interesting. Ian, what 3D printer would you recommend for a complete beginner? Ask me on next Sunday's live stream. I would not commit to that answer today. Ask me next week. And in the past, I'd have given the same answer that was just put down there by TS13 FPV. Can you simulate props? Some sort of resistance to the motor. Yeah, it's just going to burn it up, though. That's the problem. You're just going to... I did think about this. You're going to probably burn it up a little bit, aren't you? You know, if you put something like to restrict the motor a little bit. You're just going to... Yeah, I think it's just easier with props. I don't know how much the SV06 is right now. How much is the SV06? The problem with cheap printers is most of them don't just work. This is the problem with cheap printers. At the budget end, you get loads of issues. And I don't mean bad ones, but you get pain. If I talk about the Sidewinder, I've got a Sidewinder 2 over there. It's really a good printer, but my God, the bloody Z-axis is so touchy. So touchy. You are constantly messing with the Z to get it right. That's the problem. 250. Interesting. Disc shape weight. Yeah, I have seen his flywheel. But to do a 4-in-1, you'd have to have 4 of them. It's easier just to do it with props. Yeah, and look, all of the simple printers are the same. What you don't get on the basic printers is what you get on the Bamboo. What you get on the Bamboo is turnkey out the box. No one else does turnkey out the box like Bamboo. That's the problem. Okay, so just catch up on the questions before I move on to DJI. Any other questions from anyone before we move on? Anycubic Cobra 2 for while I'm on travel. It's been pretty good. What printer is the Anycube Cobra 2? Which one's that? I've not... I know it, but I don't. Let's just have a look. I'm in the middle of finishing my testing on... yeah. Yeah, I know the ones. Yeah, this whole... Interesting. You know, a lot of people... what's the price on a Prusa Mini these days? I haven't even looked. I haven't even looked at what the price on a Prusa Mini is anymore. Semi-assembled, 406. You know, the Prusa Mini is a good printer, but let's see. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I know the Prusa Mini. Do you know what? I was following the Mini for a while, and I've sort of lost track. How has it been over time? Does anyone know? I don't know how well the Prusa Mini is done with that single axis. Yeah, it's like 406. I just don't know how well it holds up. I've always wondered on that. I have always wondered on that. It's not even direct drive. No, that's the downside, isn't it? I am finishing the video. Oh, we've had a super chat. Thank you, FP Avery. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that. Just add 200 quid and get a P1P. That's the problem. That's the real problem. The QDI, I'm just finishing. I've done a lot more prints on it now. I'm going to do one more big benchy. That is the QDI X Max 3. Just to give you guys an idea, for those who haven't seen it, I am finishing that. I did do a giant benchy, but this one did have some issues in the print. If you look around there, we think it's the filament. I've been talking to QDI on it, and they've done some testing for me, and they believe it was a filament issue. You can see on the bow there, we think it was a... I actually think it was either heat creep or it was too hot in the room. But we had it there, But I did print a giant benchy. That is 750 grams of filament. I got to do another one now. It's a spool, virtually, of filament. You can almost get in that. If you're going to print a benchy, you got to print a big benchy. So I love the way the writing come out. Can I show you this on the overhead? Look, the writing is so big. It's just awesome. And the writing on the back. Let me refocus. Let me just... That's what that's meant to look like on the back, okay? I need to put an FPV system and a motor in it. But yeah, that's what... You know when you print a bench and you're always wondering what it says? But can you see these lines around here? Look, let me show you. We had some real weird behavior on this one. And then it happened up here. And it happened up there as well. And I've been trying to understand it. Nice microscope, lol. Yeah. And just for the people who may not believe, that is a standard benchy. There you go. That is a standard one. And, yeah. That just gives you a scale idea. If you're going to print big, you need to print big. But that's what the QDI is capable of. Hello, Mr. Ian. Can you please remind me of the problem with the HDZero goggles we're coming with? Can you please remind me the problem new HD goggles we're coming with? How find out if I need the new optics? If your optics were moving or loose. So if your optics were physically moving on the HDZero goggles, some people had it that the optics were moving. No one who gets them today should have that problem. Make an FPV bench. I know people keep asking me. I'm gonna have to. I have been looking at how to make an FPV benchy. I bet you the pub and I've had to work. I'm trying to work out. I had a look at how you split the model down. But that's not going to help me. What I need to do is make one where I can carve the inside out and then have the top so it slots on afterwards. But yeah, that's, I said 750 grams worth of filament. Impressive. Does it fly? I haven't tried. Someone asked how long that took. I can't remember. I think it was something like 36 hours. No, it actually wasn't. It wasn't a day. It was like 16 hours. Actually, I think it was. Something like 16 hours. Turn it into a quad. Flying benchy. That would be an idea, wouldn't it? An octocopter with one prod on the top. Hi, Elsie Prod. How are you? Thank you, Mike, for the super chat. I really do appreciate that. That thing is huge. Things I've been told. Yeah, it's... if you're going to print big, you've got to print big. Marina to put the benchy in. I like that. Yeah, I need to print another one. But I might do it in two halves. I need to figure out how to do it, how to hollow it out, and then have it so I can mount the top back on, and then have it like with RC gear in the bottom. But yeah, cool. Right, the next subject before we wrap this one up tonight, we're going to quickly talk about DJI because DJI have somewhat abandoned the O3 system. Now, whilst there's been updates for the DJI Goggles 2 and the Integras all year, sort of slipped under the radar that O3 has not had an update since January. Now, the frustration with this is DJI are still clearly ignoring all of the issues that I myself have highlighted, as well as other people have, with the O3 system, and they clearly are not Andrew, you can run it offline. You just have to put it in offline mode. You just don't have app access. But they clearly are not listening to the community on what issues we have. Now, when I'm talking about issues, there are some fundamental things that are missing on O3 that are on the original system. So number one, no option to set power level. You still have no way to restrict the output power level on O3. There's just no way to do it. You've got max power all of the time. Furthermore, we have no way to force it into 5 gigs mode on its own other than manual channels. And there's a number of little things that DJI just haven't given us. And what's frustrating is they're clearly not interested in bringing any more to the table on O3, considering we haven't had updates since January. Now, we have had some changes, and it's worth remembering this. In that update that DJI brought in January, they said that they brought support, remember, at the end of the year for the for the ear unit and Vista to the goggles too, but the original ear unit couldn't record. But the wording they used was for now. Yet they have still not updated that. So, for instance, if we go on DJI Goggles 2, actually, DJI Cadex Vista, actually, let's go DJI Ear Unit. And if we go to the DJI Digital FPV system on DJI's website, and if we go to downloads, and if we look, we had release notes, which was the 8th of the 12th, which was the last update for this system. And if you notice, added support. Oh, my control keys jumped off. Added support for Goggles 2. Recording from the ear unit is currently not possible. Now, that is a hint. They mean they're going to bring it in the future. Not saying not possible. Yet they haven't. They haven't brought any further updates for it. And it is a little bit annoying, to say the least, that they seem to have just abandoned it once again. Ricardo says O3 needs a price drop. I'm not sure. Look, it's not cheap, but there is no other system that can do what it does. I think you've also got to understand that genuinely, I think HDZero and Cadex's pricing is not necessarily long-term sustainable. And what I mean by that is, we are expecting too much for the price point we want. HDZero's pricing is has been questioned at times, but it the margins here are too low. It's the same with Cadex. Cadex are playing the low margin game. DJI don't play that game. Usually. DJI is, for what you're getting, I don't think it's that bad. I think you have to look at sustainability as well for pricing. You have to have margin in it for dealers. You have to have margin in it for the company. And that is difficult at the pricing Avatar and HDZero is. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's good for consumers. But what is the long term here? How long can you sell VTXs cheap and not really make that much money compared to others? And a point has just been made there. DJI is incredibly reliable, and they don't break. And they don't. I haven't had a single one break, no. Other than the odd physical breakage on an antenna port or something like that, the O3 ear units are bomb-proof. So, I think what's frustrating is DJI have chosen not to bring any more updates. Look, I'm not asking for miracles here, but it would be nice if they did tidy up some of the things on O3. We don't really even have a 1200 milliwatt mode. That would be nice. We've got the Hamfire, which gives us basically FCC. Need audio. Audio is interesting because no one seems to want to do it. No one really seems to want to put audio in their systems. Are we expecting an entirely new system called O4 soon? I think that's a complicated one. So, O4 is a new chipset, but just because it's a new chipset doesn't mean there's any more benefits. We believe the chipset they're using in the Air 3 is called, and it'll be the Mavic or the Mini 4, is the S2. That in itself is really not going to do much for FPV. Okay, it helps them along on their consumer drones, but it doesn't really do much for FPV. So, an O4 in itself changes nothing. We already have 1080p live feed. We already have 50 megabits a second. The S2 has allowed DJI to do more on their smaller consumer drones and means they don't need to use the P1. Now, the real question is, what is the supply like of the P1? That is actually the real interesting point. It's not, does DJI want to upgrade? It's now they have replaced that P1 officially in their new models. What is their supply like? Are they likely to do another tape out? And if you don't know what tape out is, that is the process of requesting more chips. DJI own the design. Think of tape out like sending your film in to be processed. And the question is, what is DJI's supply of the P1 like? And remember, P1 is used in all of the main consumer drones, Mavic 3, Enterprise, all of that stuff. Even DJI Transmission is using the P1, okay? So this is used in everything. But are they going to start transitioning systems over? And that's the question. I think it's too early to tell. What the new chipset gives them largely is no need anymore to have the S1 and P1 set up like they had before. Because in some products they'd use the S1, in some products they'd use the P1. Whereas now they can legitimately move everything over to the S2 and not bother having a P2, just use the S2. And the reason is, largely, the P1 is wasted in O3 because we've offloaded the processing, and that's where the S1 would come in. No, I've not heard about this before. Anyone heard of DJI Integra goggles burning people with the SD card? Never. Not heard that at all. No, not heard that. I think it comes down to technical. What I would say is the move to say O4 wouldn't be very big for them. All they would really need to do is swap out the P1 for the S2, do some tweaks on the board, maybe some software tweaks, and call it O4. The big thing to remember is the FPV compared to O3 was a big step. It's a step they've done before in their consumer drones, but it was a big step. The real thing to understand with O3 is what they've been doing in their consumer drones for the last 2 years. They just brought it into FPV. That's all it is. No. O3 Air unit does not transmit on 2.4 gigs ever. Super Deluxe, how are you, my friend? I hope you're well. No, it never transmits on 2.4, ever. Only the goggles and the remote will use 2.4. Do O3 chips and heatsink support more power? That's all the RF front end. The RF front end on O3 is identical to the RF front end on the original air unit. Okay, there's some little changes, but it's the same power amps. It's the same as everything. I'm Great Stupid Lux. Good to see you, my friend. I hope you are well. Someone who flies commercially, FPV, said Express LRS 2.4 gigs isn't approved yet to fly over crowds like festivals because the 2.4 gig band is overloaded, all with phones. Is that true? Okay, Express LRS is largely not certified. Okay, so if you think about having an RF system like TBS, you own the hardware and you own the software. Okay, so you put them together and then you send that off for certification. It gets certified. Your product is certified. Express LRS is different. It is an open source piece of software being used on third-party hardware. Express LRS in itself cannot be certified because it isn't both. It can be made to be compliant with the rules, but that is not certified. So, for instance, they do have an FCC certified use already mode in there, an FCC compliant mode, but it isn't certified. So for someone to have an Express LRS system certified, you'd have to have someone like Radiomaster put it through FCC certification. Pretty much all of Express LRS is uncertified but can be compliant. There is a difference between compliant and certified. That's the bit to understand. That is the bit to understand. So, from an insurance point of view, technically, you're going to want to use a system that is compliant and certified. And that's the complication with that side of things. You've got compliant and you've got certified. It's limiting the power of O3 is very important for people flying on sets and commercial use. And there are a lot of people using it like that. You'll be shocked how many people want that functionality. You do not want to be blasting around full RF on set. And the irony is, DJI being very big into their pro use haven't added it. Is there an Express LRS GR Bay module that does 2.4 and 900? I haven't seen one, but I could be wrong. Biochi, thank you for the 20-something super chat. I don't know which one it is. I haven't used either of those quads. The Flywoo 4 long range or the Recon 5 long range. I have not used either of them. Which one is the Recon? I can't comment on either of them. I haven't used any of the bigger long range quads. The only ones I do know are the iFlights, which are pretty good. Gep RC, you will never go wrong with, as Superfly has just said. Genuinely, you will just never go wrong with a Gep RC quad. Period. They're not a company I work with. South African Rand, thank you for that. They're not a company I work with, but genuinely, I don't think I have ever seen anyone have a problem with a Gep RC. I can't even get Gep RC to answer a bloody email, if I'm honest. But they do make some really nice quads. Long range. So which one was Superfly recommending? HD7. These are quite nice. I really like the FR7. So you got the 599 to 589, pretty good. What else have we got? Let's have a look. MZ. We got the crocodiles. Yeah, they got some really nice quads. They got some pretty nice quads. O3 version as well. It's a nice looking quad. And you'll never go wrong with the GEP-RC stuff either. iFlight as well, genuinely. I've never had a problem with the iFlight quads. I know a lot of people using the Chimeras, the long range ones, and they're absolutely solid. The iFlight Chimeras are good quads as well. Very good quads. Wait, there's an internal antenna mod for the box that some people have done it. There is a video, I'm sure there is. Where's the long range? Long range. You've got the binding flies from iFlight. You've got the Chimera 7. iFlight makes some really big ones. You've got the 10. Look at this. The Nazgul XN10 V6. This thing is a beast. I need to have a look at one of these. That thing is an absolute beast of a quad. It really, really is. Nazgul XL10 V6 6S. Oh, that's interesting. Really big quad. Really big quad. Right. A couple more questions before I wrap this one up. This week, there's a couple of videos. Nothing major this week, actually. The one I published today was actually intended for tomorrow, but I thought I'll put it out on a Sunday instead, which is rather an unusual day, actually. There is obviously some stuff going on this week, which will be released when it gets released. We will be streaming next Sunday because there'll be some stuff to talk about. 10-inch is crazy expensive when you crash. Yeah, that's for sure. Really, guys, more than anything, we are in a bit of a quieter period in FPV, but I suspect it'll liven up a little bit shortly. There is some interesting stuff around the corner, I can promise you that. Supply of components has been pretty good. We've not had too many problems there. Now, before I wrap this up, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's watched. Please do give this stream a like before we finish. We've had 62 of them. Thank you to everyone with the super chats. I really, really do appreciate it. For those who don't know, I do have a Patreon. There is a link in the description. There is also a link to my Discord server as well if you're interested in joining it. And it would be great to see you over there too. As always, thank you for spending some time with me on a Sunday night. I'm going to go and drink this drink, and I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to say stay safe. I'm going to try and find the buttons now. I'm glad the stream went without a hitch tonight because it was horrible last week. Stay safe. Don't forget to give a like. I'd like to get those likes up to 100. Come on, 74, 74, 74. Higher, higher, higher. 74, 74, 75, 75, 75, 75, 75, 75. And before we wrap this stream up, I got to end this with a clicker. We've got to end this with a clicker. So, we have to end it as we started. We're up to 8. As always with these things, you have to end the stream as it begun. Stay safe. 87, come on, nearly there. The thing will go down at 90. The thing will go down at 100. 89, come on. Come on, you amazing people. Nearly there, nearly there. Nearly there. Fishing for the likes. Oh, we've gone down. How did we go down? If we get to 90, I'll end on 90. 2 to go. 2 to go. One more. One more. And that's it. Stay safe. I'll speak to you soon.